everyone, I'm Anna Webb and welcome to A Dog's Life. Before we get started, can I just thank everyone who listens regularly and who's rated and reviewed the show, as it really makes a difference. In this episode, we're chatting to Savita Nutan, whose organisation highlights why experimenting on animals is simply unnecessary. Savita Nutan, what is your job title?
I founded my own educational organization and it's called Medicine Without Cruelty. And it's dedicated to the specific purpose of promoting non-animal methods in education, research, testing, promoting non-animal methods because they are effective and animal testing is outdated, ineffective, and needs to be removed.
Oh, no, totally. I mean, I'm so on your page. I mean, I think everyone listening is, you know,
Yeah.
the big question, Savita, is why is it still going on?
Okay, there's a few different reasons, and we should probably talk about the law firstly, but it's primarily the use of animals in science is regulated by the Animals Scientific Procedures Act 1986, known as the ASPR. And then it was amended further in 2012 to align with the European directive. So they cover all living vertebrate animals and also octopuses as well. So they have licensed the use of animal testing. And what what they've done under this act is they're not really pushing it forwards because they're not if there was there are non-animal methods that can be used, they need to be utilized instead of animals. But because it's licensed, it means that, both researchers, industries, companies have that free license to go ahead and use these animals. And
Oh, it's shocking. I mean,
yeah,
it's
it's
shocking.
categorically incorrect.
I mean, a lot of these laws, are just antiquated. For example, the whole law around pet theft, until just about 4 months ago, right? They were still using the old Theft Act of 1968, which meant that your pets were property, like, your mobile or your laptop. So the theft of a pet, mainly dogs, was considered as such in a court of law. And again,
Right.
that's where there is an issue, I feel, the court of law, because certainly in the UK, in the court of law, animals are still considered as chattel.
Right. Okay. Because, I'm always impressed by the MPs who are pushing forwards animal welfare bills because there was a recent one in the news about the banning the import of puppies because I think
Yes,
that's
yes.
the
Well,
breeding.
that again, you see, Savita, that was supposed to have been tackled 2 years ago.
Mm,
But in Parliament, they shelved a bill. So I agree with you. Government needs, I feel, to do a huge amount more on all aspects because the law, the Animal Welfare Act kept bill was shelved. Can you believe it? And
yeah.
in that bill, the smuggling and illegal importing of dogs was on the agenda, as that is causing havoc, in the actual dog owning community and earning a lot of unscrupulous people a huge amount of money, and that's
Course.
kind of the problem also, I feel.
And I'm against all animal testing. I just don't, especially and within science, because of my background in science, I could see why animal testing was just completely useless. And why it was still being used was just the biggest shock of my life. And that's what pushed me into pursuing education. I categorically don't believe that animals are an instrument to us humans, if that makes sense, that we
Oh no,
should not be
absolutely.
using them for our
Well,
purposes.
I mean, Savita, with your science background and so on, it's particularly relevant, I feel, to just point out what for me is so clearly obvious, that if you experiment, say, with drugs, as they're often, the main reason animals are experimented on to test pharmaceuticals before they're consumed by humans. Would you agree?
I don't agree that it will be useful or informative for humans. And
No, well, of course not, because I mean, a
it's not.
rat has a very different metabolism
Mm,
to a human, So that for me, and a totally different digestive system. Well, a rat's digestive system, in fairness, is probably a little bit more similar to a human's than a dog's, which
what?
is
Yeah.
completely different. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know, because rats are herbivores, where so they will have a very long digestive system like ours, but a dog, of course, is a carnivore, so they have a very different acidity, a shorter digestive tract, much faster metabolism. So anything tested on a dog that you consume has very little relevance in my eyes to a human,
Absolutely.
and that I
Yeah.
feel surely is a big argument here to put forward.
It's first you've touched on a number of great things. Firstly, yes, we might have similar body parts, you could say, as another animal. Say, for example, rats. Great. Rodents, we have similar immune systems, similar metabolism, but the way in which, say, a disease is, how should I put this,
Just
displayed,
say it. It's my
how
podcast.
how it's displayed in us compared to how it'd be displayed in a rodent. And you need to remember that a lot of complex diseases, say for example Parkinson's, you don't get rats with Parkinson's. They have been induced by killing off certain neurons. So the feel-good hormone dopamine. That's what those those brain cells that are producing those hormones, that's what's killed off in rats to produce that Parkinson's characteristics, but it will never fully encompass the entirety of a disease,
No,
not to mention a
absolutely.
complex disease like Parkinson's. And so we cannot use them to produce anything that's going to be accurate, reproducible, and is going to be a cure for humans.
I couldn't agree more. But is it to do with products? Is it to do with science? Ironically, here, these people that work in such laboratories, they're intelligent. they've, they've done well at school. um, you
Right.
know,
You're
yeah,
asking, you're asking all that education and why
yeah,
they ended up there.
yeah, exactly, exactly. One probably, I'll be honest, the only scientist I revere hugely. Mike, my podcast producer, is going to go, oh, here we go. Aren't you, Mike? It's
Rupert.
Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, who believes that the paranormal is normal and the supernatural is natural.
Right.
And
Okay.
he is a Don of Cambridge University, and he's a scientific biologist, but he reneged, if you like, on his study at Cambridge because he couldn't bear the fact that he was chopping up guinea pigs, and just took his scientific understanding into a whole different realm, which is
Yeah.
for me the most interesting subject ever. So, and yeah, this needless suffering goes beyond the pale for me, but awareness is getting out there. Would you agree, Savita, or not so much?
I agree in the fact that with the scientific community, they are realizing that animal testing needs, it needs to be removed simply because they are not getting anywhere with these animal models. And so we have so much at our disposal in terms of non-animal methods. And this is why I'm creating online courses and creating the information out there because it needs to be publicized. More people need to um, be educated in it because at the moment, there's a complete kind of disparity. You will go through education still having the bog standard education that you go into, say you might have in secondary schools to college, you might get involved in, say, dissections. But what is that actually telling you about a human body? What is that dissection? And it again, we are then using animals as an instrument to learn something which is not relevant to what, say, you want to do in the future. Then you
I
go,
know, I couldn't agree more. I mean,
yeah,
I refused to dissect my rat in my O-level
Mm.
biology. Okay.
Yeah, I
Um, and that went down well. And, when I did my study with the College of Integrated Veterinary Therapies, you see, I studied physiology in detail. And I did have to watch a rabbit dissection. Yeah,
right.
I know.
Mm.
To, I suppose, help me. I don't know, I mean, look, I wasn't there in real life. I found it absolutely awful. Yeah, to understand the connection of the kidneys to the liver, to the esophagus, and so on, that I feel is slightly different to actually cruelly putting animals like dogs, for example, the beagles in
Mm.
Cambridge,
Yeah.
through ongoing daily suffering and
Mm.
torture and a really bad life on purpose. So I do feel that's a little slightly different. I mean, a vet, when you've got an emergency with your animal, you would really hope that your vet understands how the internal system is put together.
And yeah, no, I see what you're saying. And there's nothing stopping veterinary students from getting involved in clinical skills early on. So they have this degree and providing the right information and the right clinical skills for them, that makes us assured in what they're doing. But again, it needs to be clear what is being used, how it is being used, and not, if you've gone into a career in veterinary sciences because you care about animals. So we need to rethink how we are educating ourselves to better take care of them and how we are avoiding why do we still need, say, for example, an animal's body, say early on in your career to understand how to dissect it, for example, or surgical training can go so far. There is so much more we can do with, say, for example, technology. And I mean, that's a whole other issue. But actually, I wanted to come back to what you said, that there are so many people in science that are still working in this field. Why haven't they woken up yet?
Mm,
And I've got a few different theories about this. You spend, especially if something is under law, like with this Animal and Scientific Procedures Act, it is then embedded in educational institutions and industry. So you're told, okay, the animals must be the gold standard, which absolutely not. That's not true. And if you really understood the science, and if sometimes you might spend so much time banging your head against a wall trying to get one experiment to work, but that's your day job. Your day job is to test these mice on this, drug, but you might not necessarily know what the output is. The output then might get passed on to someone else, that gets passed on to someone else, and then you'll repeat it, and then that's your daily job. And then you are told, with the amount of, how should we say it, propaganda about animal testing, that it's a necessary evil. And I went through, and I used to work in a hospital. I worked as a clinical scientist, so I was diagnosing individuals with genetic diseases. So, say if you have something that may potentially be inherited through your family, I would be involved in identifying the cause of it, so that gene mutation, and providing a report to the doctor, and it then get relayed to the patient. And after seeing in research the fact that we are using such an archaic testing system, I couldn't go back and say to the families and the people that I was working with that, oh, we're doing the best job we can. We are producing cutting edge, effective therapies, because we're not. We're
mm,
not. I mean, 92 to 95% of drugs which are tested in animals then go on to fail in humans. We wouldn't put
mm.
up with that in any other industry. And
It's
when
so,
we, oh,
yeah,
sorry, I was just going to say, when we have
go on.
effective tools that are already available, what are we doing? So
But
that's,
what tools are there then, Savita?
okay.
So, obviously everyone listening agrees, okay, on this. I mean, is it now that we can jump on artificial intelligence? It's all over the place at the moment, as scary as it is in many respects. But in other sides of things, it could prove to be an answer, right?
It absolutely can. And there's so much that AI is doing. I was reading up on this actually this morning that, there are centers across the world that are focusing on creating digital twins. So precise virtual models of human organs and systems using AI and computational models. So the digital twins simulate human how human physiological responses occur. So allowing researchers to predict how the human body would react to different substances or treatments without having to rely on any animal testing. And it not only addresses the obvious ethical concerns of using animals, but it also provides accurate human relevant scientific findings by providing data that is directly applicable to human biology. And so there are so many advanced computational techniques if we utilize the power of AI in scientific research.
Gosh, yes, yes. I mean, this is, and it is being hailed as such, isn't it, AI?
Mm.
But I mean, would it mean that loads of people lost their jobs?
Yeah, that's I have heard that argument before that what are we going to do? Okay, every industry has gone through some sort of recession or some sort of, you know, firing of individuals. People have lost their jobs and people have upskilled, reskilled. There should, if we provide the right training courses, people can move across into jobs that are ethical and jobs which are contributing to effective science. And that's why I always think that education holds the key, that we
Oh
can
no,
retrain people.
totally. No, I agree. It's interesting. The other night I watched the film with Bill Nye in it, that because I'm very fond of him as an actor, called Joy, which documents the first IVF babies. And of course, they use mice. They use mice. And it was, very interesting actually looking at how all of that's changed dramatically,
Mm.
and is now really well accepted. But back in the 60s, it was a completely different kettle of fish. It is an interesting movie to document a certain era in time. And again, as you say, how things have changed around that, for example. But a lot of animal testing went on and perhaps still does in that sphere.
There, yeah, it really does. And there are so many examples of cases in which these sorts of animal trials, you could call it, or animal tests, have directly caused devastating harm to human health. So while you might say, oh, think about the medical breakthroughs, but you know, we've seen throughout history how animal tests have caused malformations, caused severe injury, even death to humans. I mean, a quite notable example is thalidomide. So that was a pregnancy medication. I don't know whether you've heard of it, but
Oh no, absolutely. My mother, because I'm of an age, was offered it.
oh
Thank
right.
goodness. Oh no,
Oh my
absolutely.
God.
Oh yeah, so I was born when I was born, and that was when it was all happening. And luckily, she said no.
But thalidomide caused, as you know, devastating malformations in about up to 30,000 infants. If can you imagine that this was apparently safety tested? I'm saying that in air quotes, safety tested in 10 strains of rats, 11 breeds of rabbit. There were two different breeds of dogs, three strains of hamsters. They tested monkeys, they tested cats, armadillos, pigs, guinea pigs and ferrets, and it
Oh,
was all fine. No issues to their offspring, their infants, and it was absolutely fine. And it went into human um, use. And
yeah.
they even did later investigations in pregnant animals as well. So they tested it thoroughly and it did not reveal malformations in their offspring at all. So something that you might think, oh, great, it's, breakthrough. It can be used in humans because you've been tested in all these different animals. And then we've later seen such devastation in human health. So, my point with medicine without cruelty is we can produce effective treatments for humans by using human relevant techniques. As simple
No,
as that.
Totally, I totally agree. I mean, where is it at with Parliament at the moment? I mean, I know that the Camp Beagle team, has lobbied extensively at Parliament. I've recorded a good few episodes with them, and there, I won't, name them, but there is an actual private. You see, it's the private. Is it? You see, what the private sector, haven't you? Perhaps justifying their existence almost in the pharmaceutical realm. For me, Camp Beagle, obviously I'm a huge dog lover, is really bad. For me, it seems this issue is so plain and needs to be addressed, but it just seems to be shrouded in this. Let's not tell everybody the whole picture, there, and that,
I know.
yeah.
I
So, I
mean,
mean, Savita, who are your courses designed to reach? Who would you like to do your courses?
I want to provide education, and I think education should start from an early age, from even primary school. Now, I know we don't do dissections early on in schools, and it's too early to speak to students about animal testing because we don't want to upset anyone. But I think there needs to be a clear pathway to explain to students about our relationship with animals. Firstly, that we need to live peacefully with all living beings around us. That's our animals, whether they're on land or on sea. And once we kind of develop the ethics and get students to understand their relationship with animals, it's something that can be built on from primary school all the way up to university. So when secondary school, it's then being able to provide digital resources for students so then they can understand what the future looks like, maybe even, getting guest speakers involved and really putting the money and the effort into providing digital resources. In college as well, that I mean, I am currently designing a module and I'm also designing a whole diploma in non-animal methods. So students, before they go into university and they kind of get set in their career pathway, for example, that maybe they want to work in a particular life science, do a life sciences degree, they can do this level 3, which is college just before university. They can do this course, which will cover different aspects of non-animal test methods, whether it's for cosmetic or other toxicology sciences. And it provides them with the basis to understand, okay, right, there's all this good that I can do using this effective non-animal tools. This is something that I can then use in university. And then in university, I'd like to create modules as well. So then students can, maybe at the beginning it could be an elective, but it's something where students can get this technical knowledge because it's when you get into university that you need to start developing the skills and the expertise in particular techniques. So that's what we can build on. Say, for example, if our future might be AI. So, surprisingly, kids learn how to code from a very young age in schools. There are coding clubs all the way from primary school. And it could be something that in university that they are, coding for human illness, human disease exploration. And we can use other techniques such as, you know, I talk a lot about organoids and organ on a chip. So you can actually create the architecture of a human tissue outside of the body. It's completely non-invasive. I'm not saying about harming any humans. No, that's not my point. But you can create this in a laboratory, human cells and tissues, and that can be used within drug discovery and drug testing. So it's about providing students of, say, in a university age with the necessary skills and then, we can promote them into these pathways. They are our
100%.
future.
But what about approaching, dare I say it, the big pharmaceutical firms directly? Surely they will influence the future of this.
They they will be part of it. And I went to a World Congress on alternatives to animal experimentation in I suppose it was about a year ago now. And it was very interesting because you had lots of big pharma and a lot of big talk about, okay, yes, we are spending this amount on non-animal testing methods, and it's just not good enough. We need them to, cut the funding on if they are saying that, okay, look how great these, say, for example, cosmetic testing, you can design, say, a 3D skin model. Now, if that is working effectively, we need to redirect our money, that's currently being spent on animal testing and being diverted onto non-animal methods. And I think I concluded from going there and seeing everything that I'm not looking for a seat at their table, because if I was looking for a seat at their table, I'll be waiting a long time for change to happen. It's better to create your own damn table. And
Interesting.
and that's why you have people who are pioneering and championing animal-free research and non-animal methods. I mean, you mentioned Camp Beagle, and there's loads of animal rights groups that are out there promoting non-animal test methods. And I was reading about Humane Society International and all the information they're putting out there. So there's a lot of good that is happening in the world.
No, of course. No, no, no. And it's great. I mean, I've been thinking like this for almost 60 years. I mean,
Course.
but still no changes is happening. But, it is only by having a voice and campaigning. So I absolutely agree.
Absolutely.
Something that hit the press just last week, actually. So I'd love to know your kind of views on this is cloning. Last week, it was announced that the first animal cloning place has opened actually in Shropshire, where I grew up, actually, in the UK. Previously, the only place where it could be done is America.
Yeah.
So, what do you think of that from a scientific, ethical perspective?
Oh, okay. Firstly, so we already know that cloning is possible. We've seen it happen before, and the immense animal cruelty that is involved. I mean, so if you wanted to clone, I mean, I know it can be used, for example, to clone a beloved dog, for example. So say if you had that in the family. Now, there is no guarantee, you've had that animal companion and they've had that happy life, and you are now going to inflict, now think about this, cruel, immense suffering on another animal to bear the child or the infant, an animal that's not going to be theirs anymore. It's then going to be taken to you. I just, for someone who's an animal lover, it doesn't make sense to me why you would condone this sort of cruelty. I, yeah, because, you know, it means that you have to go back to breeding, back to selective breeding farms, as you call it. And you're putting another animal back in a cage in a laboratory to then produce another animal. And if you think about the amount of animals who don't have a home.
Yes.
There's so many animals out there that don't have a happy home
Oh no, particularly at
and
the
adopt.
moment, the
Yes,
most ever in the history of mankind, actually. That's how bad it is out there in terms of
exactly.
animals needing adoption. I agree with what you're saying, to be honest. I also feel in a way it's being it's a bit cruel to the humans, this, because there I truly believe there's no way you will get an exact clone, as so
Mm.
much is
Yeah,
epigenetic. So, as you say, if this puppy is born in a laboratory condition, a dog's brain evolves so quickly, so much faster
yeah,
than a human's, that, by 7 weeks before you even will receive the clone, their temperament imprint has, been pretty well created. And that will have been very different. So it's the epigenetic side of it you see as well. I don't know,
I
at
mean,
all. And the cost of it is
it's
quite staggering.
extortionate. Have you
Yeah.
seen it? It's extortionate how much it
Yeah.
costs. And I think if people actually understood the science of cloning, it means that you have to get a female animal. It means that you have to inseminate that animal, against its will, and then take away the puppy, the litter
Well, the
that they
puppy
have.
would be
So
taken away anyway, Savita. I
yeah,
mean, all dogs that give birth, they don't
exactly.
keep
Yeah.
all of their puppies, and reproduction is to a degree a very natural experience for animals. So, but on that side, no. But I do agree. It's
Yeah, because
ethically a little bit skewed, shall we say. But
completely, because
yeah, I know, staggering, but it has hit the UK as of last week. That's something, so
this animal doesn't have a choice, that's what we need to take into account, that this animal does not have a choice to, you know, they're put in this cage, they're put in this place to produce something that probably doesn't feel like their own anyway, if that makes sense, because it's a clone of another breed of animal, another dog.
exactly. And of
Yeah.
course, that mother isn't the mother of
Yeah.
the original dog.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everything that
It's
mother ate,
completely.
everything that mother's learnt, any illnesses that mother may have in her DNA
It's
will,
very different. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think I'm on the side that does say it could be capitalizing on a human's grief, which,
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
science perspective, is really unethical to humans.
Mm.
So it's an interesting one. It
You
is
made
an
it.
interesting one. But yeah, I just think you're right, Savita. Look, it's about looking at this as, a holistic picture. And we wouldn't be here if it weren't for animals. And we've evolved. All sorts of species have played their role, in
Yeah,
our evolvement over centuries. And they they deserve our due respect. That's the
absolutely.
bottom line here. But this all sounds so interesting. So, where can people learn a bit more about, your courses and maybe reach out to you, Savita?
Sure. So my website is www.medicinewithoutcruelty.com. I'm also on social media under the same handle, Medicine Without Cruelty. Please do get in touch. Everything, all the information will be put on there. And yeah, please do get in touch.
Amazing. Thank you, Savita.
You made a really good point about epigenetics. It's fascinating.
Oh no, it's so fat. I'm
It,
so on the
you
page with
know,
epigenetics.
epi,
It's my
epi
thing, and wellness, in our pets. And
I was just going to mention, so epigenetics is, so we have our DNA, the recipe book that makes us who we are, right?
yes,
And we all have, the same ingredients, so to speak. So do animals. And the there are different modifications that can happen to the DNA, this recipe book, that doesn't change the recipes, but affects how, say, the recipes are made. Say, for example, I don't know, I don't know how to explain it, but say if you have a recipe for a cake, that's the analogy I'm using.
yeah, no, I'm with
Say
you on
you can
this.
you can add modifications in there. Maybe you're adding in an extra, say, flavoring or
Egg,
something.
yeah, or it could even
A
be as
flavoring.
detailed. Sure, but it's so interesting this.
Yeah.
You could use an organic egg or you could use a non-organic egg. And interestingly, that might contribute to the difference in the taste or the texture of that cake. It's as that, yeah. And this is the point. There's this thing, isn't there, Savita, called the genome?
Yeah, that was my background. Sorry, I don't know about the difference between organic or non-organic eggs. I don't eat eggs, but yeah, but you're on the same point, that say if you did change the brand of flavoring you use, or the brand of ingredients you use, that isn't a great analogy for epigenetics. And our genome is the entire recipe book that makes us exactly who we are. And that's what made me become an animal activist in a way, because if you understand the genetics and what makes us truly unique, you would realize that even, say, a monkey who might be up to 99% similar to us, or 95%, chimpanzees are about 95% in terms of DNA, similar to
Yeah,
us.
yeah. It's a
But
bit like the dog and the wolf. Yeah, absolutely.
exactly, there's that kind of remaining 5 to 10%, that causes fundamental biological differences, which means that they cannot be used for that purpose. And
But
that's why,
let's just discuss the genome ever so
sure,
quickly. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's such an interesting. It basically encapsulates every cell, doesn't it? And it's a
Yeah.
semi-permeable structure, the genome. So it's designed to let
Mm.
good things in to fuel our cellular energy that keeps us alive. But
Yeah.
in its semi-permeability, unfortunately, it can let bad things into cells that can create disease, and that will be different in absolutely every single human being, depending on where they work or, everything, what they
So
eat
stress,
mainly. I
stress
mean,
is amazing.
stress, absolutely. There's so much more science on stress, but now, which is fascinating. But, mainly diet. I mean, let's cut to the chase. I mean, you are what you eat, and this is why.
Yeah.
So again, if we were to look at the cloning example, the surrogate mother, if she'd just been fed on a very overly processed diet, which 80% of dogs globally are, then that embryo, unless I'm wrong in this, will be absorbing negative factors into it even before it was born.
Right. This is so, yes, in the sense that the the developing fetus will absorb nutrients from the mother. And actually, you can you can actually get free floating DNA from the developing fetus, the baby, inside mother's blood as well. So it changes both, the both the developing baby, but
Right.
also the mother as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I
There's a
suppose
lot
it's,
that goes into it. So yeah, no, that I mean, nutrition is absolutely key because that influences our development, whether we're, inside or outside. Uh,
yes. No, it is so interesting. And, the physiology of all of us is
mm.
fascinating. How we keep going, you know,
Yeah.
um, it's really interesting. And I just feel health generally, well-being needs to be nurtured. I'm very
Yeah,
much on that side of the fence. So
I agree.
my own pets, rarely, if ever, have any pharmaceuticals. Occasionally a flea treatment on my cat. I never put flea treatments on my dogs, for example, all sorts of things. We never do wormers. We test before we treat. I don't vaccinate annually. I titer test instead, and so on and so forth, really, and minimize, that, because from my study, that is what, you reduce the body burden. And of course, food can be considered a body burden.
Yes, and I think people don't understand that your metabolic processes, how you metabolize all these, food you're taking, the nutrition you're taking in, that is based on your genetics in part as well. So, your metabolic pathways are all to do with your genetics. So studying, say, for example, these metabolic changes in, just coming back to the science, coming in a specific, say, a human relevant technique means that you are able to mimic the same metabolic pathway as a human.
Yeah, it's but yeah, this is it. So
Yeah.
in a nutshell, Savita, I think we've discussed. I've so enjoyed this
Oh,
conversation,
thank
and
you.
it just goes to underline really why testing on animals needs to stop for the betterment of everybody, really, the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anna, for having me.
Thank you, Savita. Well, that's our show. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, go on, rate and review the show wherever you tune into your podcasts. Thanks again, of course, to Savita Nutan for joining us today. And all the links, of course, you got it, in the show notes. Thanks, of course, to Mike Hansen, my producer, for all the music and production as ever. And thanks, of course, to my own dogs, Mr. Binks and Prudence, and not forgetting Baggy the cat, who are my daily inspiration for this podcast.
And while you're at it, why don't you just subscribe? Because we'll be back in your feed next Sunday. And that way, you're never going to miss a show ever again. Bye for now.